Greetings, my friends. How are we doing today? Once again, I have compiled my favorite videos on a specific topic. This time, it is shamanism. Now, those new to this channel, I will tell you straight out, I have a great deal of respect for shamans. Real shamans. Not the bullshit artists. Not the blonde housewife from Nebraska who thinks she's a shaman, who hasn't gone through 20 or more years of indoctrination, of apprenticeship, of grueling, ritualistic practices to become a shaman. No, this is some fucking asshole who woke up one morning and decided, I feel like a shaman. So my friends, I give you my favorite videos on the topic of shamanism. I hope you enjoy it. Now, I've used that quote often, but what does it really mean? Well, to put it simply, if you want truth, you have to go to the source. Now, granted, those early humans who drew those first images of horned deities on a cave wall are not around to be interviewed. But their spirit still lingers, their DNA still survives within us all, and their stories are still being told over and over again in our genetic memories. The primal is where the source is. We lived in a primitive state for hundreds of thousands of years. We've only been, quote, civilized for maybe, 6,000 years? Primal is our natural state. We are savages at our core, barbarians pretending to be cultured. The human spirit cannot and has never been fully domesticated. We're like that wild beast forced to perform in a circus, when in truth our natural propensity is to the savage, which should be blatantly obvious. But who is forcing the beast to perform? Many of us have left the confines of the circus, but we still have not returned to the wild. But you may ask, how can we return? We've been away for so long. Well, one way of getting in touch with our primordial psyche is through ritual. There are some who believe that the act of ritual may have begun with art. I find this notion fascinating because ritual done right is truly an art form. Now, going way back, there was, let's say, a Homo erectus who took up a bone or a stick and with a jagged rock etched a simple design upon it in order to convey that which rested within the depths of its psyche. It may have done this subconsciously, even the better, thus initiating that first engagement with the transcendental. This somewhat innocuous act opened the door just a crack to the spirit world, allowing it to take a brief peek inside. But the best evidence for true early ritual among archaic humans was in their burial practices, where pendants and beaded necklaces have been found, thus proposing the idea that they had some concept of an afterlife. Next would come the Paleolithic cave paintings, where one would physically have to venture into the depths to then psychologically venture into the depths by depicting beasts or maybe even a horn god upon a cave wall. And they may have participated in acts of sensorial spectacle in the caves or possibly around the fires, such as singing, drumming, dancing, ingesting hallucinogenic mushrooms, and maybe even painful procedures in order to bring about altered states of consciousness. As we continue along this prehistoric timeline, we come across what are known as the Venus figurines, such as the Venus of Willendorf. Estimated to be from 25 to 30,000 years old, this Venus, with her exaggerated female sexual parts, possibly represents an early fertility deity, or perhaps even a mother goddess. On the Isle of Malta, similar figures were found, which turned out to be linked to the construction of some of the earliest stone buildings in the world. These temples and the burial chambers related to those figurines contained many images of obese humans, some no larger than a few inches, others giant-sized, as well as images of animals and phallic symbols. Understand that prehistoric cults were radically different in various societies. For example, the cults of domestic life were distinct from the cults of death and burial. And, as expected, the characteristics of these early religions and spiritual beliefs transformed in the Proto-Neolithic and Neolithic periods. An example would be animals, and those viewed as the essence of higher beings, especially eagles, falcons, and ravens, became very important in evolving into true animal cults. Hooved creatures, especially sheep and oxen, played an important part in sacrificial rites, and bulls especially, which were seen as symbols of masculinity, while horses appeared as domesticated animals and also as sacrifices near the end of the Neolithic period. And this brings us to animism. Animism in its many complex forms is in some ways still the underlying dominant religious or spiritual tradition across all cultures. Now, a simplistic definition of animism would be that it is the belief in spiritual beings, or that it's the common religion amongst the world's simple-minded indigenous cultures because they're not sophisticated enough or smart enough to be monotheists. Now, the word animism comes from the Latin anima, meaning breath or soul, and it's been asserted and argued that all religions, from the simplest to the most complex, involve some form of animism. According to the 19th century definition, animism is the belief that nature is animated, that all things have souls, that the world is replete with awareness inhabiting rocks, trees, storms, you name it. When first studied, animism seemed to be the key to understanding the so-called primitive mind, the human intellect at the earliest knowable stage of cultural evolution. Many today, though, consider this view to be rooted in a profoundly mistaken premise because, in truth, animism is a bit more complicated than that. because the religious or spiritual ideas of the hunter-gatherers interviewed during the 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries have been far from simple. For maybe the past 70 years or so, all cultures and religious practices have been regarded by anthropologists as being comparable, as in reflecting a fully evolved human intelligence. Simply put, animistic cultures are no less sophisticated spiritually than any other. Yes, animists accept that all things are non-human persons with whom one may develop a relationship, but at the same time, not all these souls are equal. Some cultures, for instance, saw the oak as sacred above all other trees, while some may have regarded features of the environment to be non-human relatives or ancestors from whom members of the community have descended. Now, in animism, there is no single creed or doctrine. There is no pope. It's a view of the world consistent with a certain range of religious beliefs and practices, many of which may still linger in the, quote, more complex and sophisticated religions. Back a few hundred years ago, when Europeans settled or conquered the Americas and parts of Africa and Asia, what they first learned of the traditions and beliefs of the indigenous folk often came by way of the Christian missionaries. One favorite story is when one of these missionaries encountered some Inuits in what is now the Yukon. The missionary revealed the word of the Lord, telling these poor heathens about God, Jesus, heaven, and hell, and how if they don't believe and pray to the Lord, they will burn in a lake of fire for eternity. The chief of this band of Inuits looked at the man and asked, "What if we never knew this? Would your God have sent us to hell? Meaning, are all my ancestors now burning in a lake of fire?" The missionary thought for a moment, then said, "No, the Lord wouldn't do that. He's a compassionate God." The chief responded with, "Then why did you tell us?" Anyway, being unsympathetic to what was regarded as primitive superstitions, the monotheism of the Christians has brought about a world-denying view because of this idea of reward or punishment, heaven or hell. The notion of oneness with nature that is found in animism does not matter to them. Thus, that connection with the carnal was or is broken within the hearts and minds of the Abrahamists. Now, who or what is the conduit in an animistic society between this level of reality and that of the higher and lower planes? And who is that which takes on the malevolent spirits when needed? This would be the shaman. Their duties go beyond that of the common holy man or woman, for they become one with the vital forces of nature and beyond. They are healers, prophets, diviners, and guardians of religious lore. Their remedies may be ritualistic cleansing or the overpowering of negative forces. They may be called upon to discover that which has offended the animal spirits or do spiritual battle with a rival shaman who is doing harm to the tribe. They are consulted at times of communal misfortune or sickness. Natural causes were recognized for many diseases, but others were questionable. Treatment of these illnesses is dictated by the shaman's guardian spirit, which could consist of him or her ritually sucking the disease agent out of the body brushing it off with a bird's wing, or drawing it out with dramatic motions. But sometimes illness could come from spirit loss. Thus, the shaman would have to go on an astral journey to recover the patient's spirit and reintroduce it into the body. They are the lifeblood of their communities. Their wisdom is boundless, and their connection to the spirit world is as solid as their connection to this reality. They are people chosen by their tribe to partake in this venture, this lifelong commitment to be they who open the doors into the other worlds as a sacred duty to their community. Now, I'm going to go on a tangent here, so bear with me. I hold great respect for these individuals, the real shamans, but I have none for the bullshit artists, those who take the name shaman and bastardize it for some recognition or a few bucks. I may not look it, but I, like many Americans, have some indigenous DNA. No, I'm not Cherokee like so many of you claim to be. My great-grandmother was an indigenous Mexican of the Tohono O'odham, which in English means people of the desert, the Sonoran Desert. But I won't sit here and declare I know what it feels like to be of native stock or have dealt with the hardships of living on a reservation, but there is something in me that gets riled when I see these frauds, these plastic shamans trying to sell their hippie nonsense. Some of these fucks really think they are shamans. They're delusional. Others know they're pretending and do it out of greed. The former should be locked up in a mental hospital. The latter should be in jail. But I digress. Shamans were associated with powers usually thought to be beneficial to the community, but were believed in some cases to use their powers for sorcery. This is when we get to the question asked in the title of the video. Who was the first to walk the left-hand path? Now, to answer this question, we have to go to contemporary animistic cultures where they have a form of witchcraft. No, not modernity's interpretation of witchcraft, but something different, something that can be found in certain individuals, a psychic essence, if you will. But to those of the community at large, it's an illness, a spiritual illness, and if one is ill, they need to be healed. And this illness, of course, is detrimental to not only the afflicted person, but also to the whole tribe out of fear it could spread like a virus. Now, let's go back in time, let's say 50,000 years, to an animistic tribal society where you find a shaman afflicted by this witchcraft. This man, though, has a different reaction. He absorbs this essence brought upon him by a current, a flow of psychic energy. He accepts it, not as deleterious, but as beneficial. It's empowering. It gives him a sense of wonder, of limitless possibilities, because he is no longer restrained by the rudimentary dictates of the tribe. This is the first time in his life he feels fully liberated. Understand, this is a mask of the current that predates Ahriman, Set, or Shiva by thousands of years. This is darkness manifest, a new mask of the archetype, which has emerged from the collective unconscious in order to enact chaos. But chaos is not always a bad thing, because when the soul or psyche of a community becomes stagnant, a fire has to be lit and some destruction needs to take place. Not in the physical realm, but in the soul of the tribe. Because what comes after this chaotic stage is growth. For an extreme example, in Europe, if it wasn't for the Black Death of the 14th century, which resulted in wide-ranging social, economic, cultural, and religious changes, there wouldn't have been the Renaissance of the 15th century. This is the spark of divine madness needed to disrupt the soul to bring about liberation. Amongst the gods, this can be seen in the actions of both Shiva the Destroyer and Kali. And here we have not only the first person on the left-hand path, but the birth of witchcraft as an art form. For this shaman wants to retain that sense of power, of oneness, not with the collective, but with the divine spark within, with that black flame. It's now more than an essence, it is a flow that can be channeled through the kinetic activities of the individual for the benefit of oneself. And for thousands of years it continued as such, outrageous, transgressive, and antithetical to the norms of conventional beliefs. And thus are the origins of the occult sciences, the eternal natural law, which later would be all but destroyed by the Abrahamic forces. But witchcraft, that which originated as a heterodox form of animism, left-hand path, if you will, has unfortunately been made soft and pathetic by the weak souls of the modern world. Recently I got a comment on one of my videos about shamanism, and it goes as such. I have a quick question. Do you see any conflict here between your non-theistic, atheistic worldview of the sect of the Horn God and the views you expressed here, where shamanic practitioners are interacting with what would appear to them as external entities? Do you see this also from a mind-only perspective? Apologize if I have perhaps misrepresented your views as well. No, you didn't. Well, my views are a bit complex, I'll put it that way. Some of you who are regulars for this channel already know what my views are when it comes to the theist-atheist debate. I am no fan of it. People who get wrapped up in that debate ignore the obvious, and that is the most important aspect, and that is, what does your personal practice do for you, whether you believe in it literally or figuratively, metaphorically, or whatever. What it does for you, how it enriches your life, how it leads you, helps to lead you down your path. That is the most important thing. Now, there's the basic question of reality. When it comes to all this, and I've stressed this before, I have a Cartesian view of reality, and that is, I don't know what reality is. I don't know what real is. I know I exist. I think, therefore I am. But I don't know if, I don't know, this microphone I'm staring at actually exists. I could be imagining this all, you know. The fact I am the founder of a real world esoteric occult, the left-hand path organization called the Sect of the Horn God, that I have a YouTube channel, that I have a beautiful wife. All that could be my imagination. I could be sitting in a, I don't know, padded room somewhere right now, drooling on myself, you know, in a straitjacket, imagining all of this. Or you, who are listening to this right now, it could simply be a figment of your imagination, couldn't it? You don't know 100%. You cannot be 100% certain of anything except for your own personal consciousness. So the real, not real aspect, that's mind-only perspective. Yes, it is a mind-only perspective. Because everything is filtered through the mind. Reality, if it is there, it comes through the mind. All comes through the mind or the psyche. All of it. So, are the spirits real? Yes, they are real. They are real aspects of the collective unconscious or your personal unconscious. They dwell within the depths of your psyche. And going down, becoming one with them, getting to know them, listening to what they have to say, and then bringing that back up. That's very shamanic, if you will. And when it comes to these primitive animistic societies, I compare their relationship to us, the more advanced first worlders, if you will, to the older generation or older generations and their relationship to the younger, the tech-savvy generation. Get what I'm saying? These primitive societies are people with an abundance of knowledge, knowledge that we often dismiss in the same fashion a Gen Z or whatever, a young person would dismiss the wisdom of an individual a few decades older than them. So it's the arrogance of youth. There's a reason why their lifestyle, the lifestyle of these ancient animistic societies, hasn't changed over the millennia. It's because it works. It works for them, and they're in tune with their environment, not only their physical environment, but psychological or spiritual, that animistic world of the spirit, if you will. Now, one of my favorite stories of the interactions between the younger and older societies was from a few years ago when an American Christian missionary named John Allen Chau, was going to go spread the word of Jesus to the people of the North Sentinel Island in the Indian Ocean. Now, some say these people have been on that island for 60,000 years. Think about it. Civilization as we know has only been around for, 6,000 years? Anyway, our young Christian friend was going to save the souls of these poor beleaguered heathens, and what happened is they basically turned him into hamburger meat and buried him on the beach. The hubris of youth and the arrogance of the Christian. I think most of us are familiar with shamanism or have a general idea of what it is, but for those who don't know, shamans are the intermediaries between this world and the world of spirit in a society that has an animistic worldview. Animism being the idea that everything is animated by a soul or spirit. Shamanism isn't directly connected to any single culture, but experts say the term shaman originated with the Tungus people of eastern Siberia. And some archaeologists have argued that the word may have entered the Tungus lexicon as a bastardized form of the Arabic term shaitan, meaning devil, which was used by Europeans in regard to the non-Christian spiritual practices of the indigenous folk beyond the Ural Mountains of Russia. Interesting thought. Anyway, anthropologists adopted the term shaman and have used it to refer to the spiritual and ceremonial traditions among indigenous cultures worldwide. This is because of the stark similarities between these various ancient traditions. Shamans are individuals with a specific duty in an animistic society, and that duty is to go to the other planes of existence, converse with the spirits, and bring back messages for the benefit of the community. Shamanism is in no way tied to any specific religion or creed. Even though a variety of formal religions are said to have roots in ancient shamanic traditions, it's a spiritual practice. You'll hear it referred to as a religion, but it is not. But then again, there's a lot of bullshit going around online concerning neo-shamanism. A lot of bullshit. The New Age culture has taken possession of it and coated it with a veneer of Judeo-Christian morality because, my hippie friends, there is no one more Christian than you. I know, right now you're weeping into your bowl of gluten-free granola, claiming you've long ago left Christianity in the dust, but you haven't. You're still tethered to that umbilical cord connected to Mother Modernity, to the Western world's foundation based upon the Christian good-bad duality. And why are you? It's fear. You're afraid to face the darkness. You want safety above anything else. But until you let that go, until you realize that it's not about good or evil, but about order and chaos, you will never truly be in tune with the ways of the ancients. And besides, the number one reason you can never be a true shaman is we here in the Western world don't live in an animistic society. Now, for those of you who are regular viewers of this channel, you will know I got this thing for the primal. Because of this, I have an interest in shamanism because, as many believe, it is the earliest known form of accessing the sacred. And like all spiritual practices, shamanism has its heterodox variant. This is called Black Shamanism. Black Shamanism rejects the notion of a shaman as a healer and guide in favor of personal gain. That is, they perform their rituals for the benefit of the self. Thus, in my opinion, making them practitioners of the left-hand path. You can say that shamans of the dark side utilize a form of shamanism which is, quote, the evil counterpart of traditional shamanism. Understand that shamans are labeled according to the direction from which they draw their power. Thus, a shaman who is supported by dark deities and spirits is known as a shaman of the black side. The shamans of the black side do not attempt to reach the highest of the three planes of existence, but instead choose to connect with this plane, the carnal, in the lower plane or underworld. Black invocations are, therefore, intended to overcome negative deeds and consequences by pitting might against might. The black spirits act as agents of vengeance. They are adversaries and enforcers, worshipped as entities of black heaven. The black shamans are known for many dark deeds, but what they all have in common is conjuring evil spirits, warping the elements for destructive means, placing curses upon people, and stealing the life force from the living. Thus, they are sometimes referred to as the eaters of souls. One exaggerated form of black shamanism would be the Navajo figure known as the skinwalker. Tradition has it that skinwalkers come about when a shaman abuses indigenous magic for the benefit of evil. He is then given mystical powers that vary in different traditions, but the one thing they all have in common is the ability to turn into or possess an animal or person. Now, in Mongolia, it is believed by some that black shamanism came about due to the encroachment of Buddhism into the Mongols' animistic culture. This mix of Buddhist and shamanic traditions became known as yellow shamanism. So, like here in the West, you have a corruption of an ancient non-dualistic tradition. And to retain that purity of the practice, what did they do? They emphasized the darkness. Well, greetings, my friends. This video, I'm gonna freeball this video, and well, basically, it's a response to my last one, which was on black shamanism. Now, I was anticipating getting some questions, comments, retorts, if you will, because of some of the comments I made about neo-shamanism, shamanism as represented here in the Western world. Now, I'm bound to get a whole bunch more. Yeah, over the next, who knows how long this video will be up. So, just to more or less, let's say, well, I'm doing this video more in anticipation, let's say, than in response to the comments I already got, because the vast majority of the comments I got were great. You people get it, most of you. Now, to begin with, animism, or the animistic worldview, is necessary for there to be shamanism. All right? What I don't get is you have people here, all right, who live here in the West. And when I mean the West, I mean, you know, of course, the United States, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, so on and so forth. All right? The Western culture. You have people who live here in this Western culture that have zero connection to animism. Now, there are some people, like for instance, Mr. Dark, who has made a couple of comments on my videos, who whose origins are from Paraguay and has connections to ancient animistic traditions. All right. He would be a different story. What I'm talking about, all right, are these quasi-hippie types who have read a book, watched a documentary, whatever, and decided, I'm a shaman. Well, to begin with, I know you are not a shaman because one does not elect themselves or nominate themselves or christen themselves a shaman. The community decides whether you are a shaman or not. Now, you can be of a shamanic heritage, if you will. Let's say your father or grandfather or whatever was a shaman, and you can be chosen. And a lot of people are chosen from the lineage of past shamans. But unless the community has stepped forward and goes, you have the characteristics of a shaman, you have the traits, so on and so forth, guess what? You're not a fucking shaman, all right? I saw this one video. What is it? The 7 ways of knowing you're a shaman, or 7 traits that you could possibly be a shaman, or some such. In one of the traits, the woman said, if you were struck by lightning. That kind of shit hurts my head. I think it's insulting to the actual shamans here. I mean, on this planet, because there are still actual, real shamans from animistic cultures from all around the world that actually exist, men and women. And when somebody who simply thinks, hey, this kind of, I feel like I'm a shaman, and then insists they are shamans, vast majority of those people, what did they do? What did they do with that when they have that revelation? When they suddenly realize, oh my God, I've been endowed with the aura of shamaness, or whatever the fuck. What do? They charge money for their services. Now, shamans will do that within their animistic cultures, whatever. But that isn't the main reason why they do it. These people, you got these people like live in the Hollywood Hills that, put crystals on your chest and ring bells and blow smoke up your ass, and then insist, that was $1,000 an hour or whatever. That kind of shit, all right. I'm not one for cultural appropriation. I hate that term, all right. Like some people will insist if you, I don't know, you eat tacos, you're somehow appropriating on Mexican culture or whatever. I hate that kind of crap, okay. There's cultural appropriation and there's cultural appreciation. I know this girl, blonde, beautiful young woman who does the hula, all right. She is not appropriating Hawaiian culture. She appreciates it. She really loves it, all right? And she's very humble about it. Now, when you insist that you are a shaman and you are appropriating that culture, all right, mainly for material gain, well, that, to put it bluntly, is extremely fucked up. That says a lot about you and what sort of human being you are. And you are a despicable prick. All right? And also you who let's say, feel the vibe. Oh my goodness, I feel like I'm a shaman. You're delusional, all right? because you did not go through the extensive training it took to become a shaman, the years and years of training, of mental discipline, of tradition. That's a key right there. Tradition. You didn't go through any of that. You just woke up one morning, maybe watched a video on YouTube or read a book, and then by the end of the day you decided, this is what I am. You too can go fuck yourself, but you're not as bad as the others, all right? You're not as bad as the charlatans that are charging the gullible many dollars for their useless services, let's say, their feel-good services. Now, we all, no matter where you're from, though, I will admit this, no matter where you're from, there are some shamanic roots, but you gotta go way back. I'm talking, in some cases, many thousands of years. And you, us, most of us here in the Western world have lost contact with that. At the same time, I will say this. You can utilize shamanic techniques in your personal practice. That's fine. That's good. I do that myself. All right? I get into, let's say, the going down into the underworld. I've participated in the use of DMT to do so. I've done deep breathing exercises. I have delved to commune with the spirits, if you will. The spirits that dwell within the depths of the psyche. And you can call that utilizing shamanic techniques. But I would never call myself a shaman. All right? I dig, I love the primal aspects of being. I am an enthusiast over the primal aspects of being. I think we, all of us who practice these esoteric arts, if you will, should look as far back as we can possibly go. But don't christen yourself that which you are not. All right? So, my friends, I hope that answers some questions. I know I'm gonna catch some heat from the hippies, and that's fine. I'm used to it. I got a video that's called "Modern Druidism is Bullshit." You should see some of the comments on that one. But then again, people are entitled to believe whatever the fuck they want. All right, so my friends, if you enjoyed this video, if you like my video, if you enjoy this content, please like, share, and subscribe. Help me to get this message out. The message of evil. All right, so until next time. Greetings, friends. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, you know I've been critical of modern or neo-shamanism. This is because when I study any given subject, I want to get to its core, to its deep historical and psychological significance. Modern shamanism, on the other hand, is contemporary bullshit perpetrated by charlatans. And because of my critical perspective on this subject, someone wrote to me stating, "Who are you to tell me who I'm not? I've studied for years. I am a shaman." Now, the first thing I thought was I must have struck a nerve because only someone who knows they're a phony would react like that. Then I thought, the best way to respond would be with a video. So, I bring you 7 ways of knowing you're not a shaman. Number 7, if you call yourself a modern shaman. See this guy? Do you have anything in common with him besides the fact you're both Homo sapiens? And do you think he refers to himself as a modern shaman? Of course he doesn't. It's obvious who he is, what he is. You, on the other hand, a better term for you is plastic shaman, because you're attempting to pass as a shaman when you have no real connection to those ancient cultures who have been practicing it since the beginning of time. Number 6, if you were born with a name like Karen or Lloyd, or Steve or Derek or Melinda, you get my point. Even if you blonde-haired, blue-eyed Americans think you have Cherokee blood flowing through your veins, it doesn't mean you qualify as a shaman. On a side note, just because you were born in the U.S. doesn't make you a Cherokee. I've said this before. Why is it always Cherokee? Why isn't it Miwok, Pomo, or Pima? Number 5. If you became a shaman after watching an online video. Did you become aware of your shamanic powers after watching a video with a title like 7 Signs You're Destined to be a Shaman? Or maybe it was 10 signs or a dozen. Whatever the numbers were or what the traits are, it doesn't matter because that glassy-eyed suburban housewife doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. Why do I say this? Because feeling like you might be a shaman isn't enough to make you a shaman. Trust me, if someone told you that simply feeling like you're a professional MMA fighter is enough to make you one, you're in for a rude awakening. Number 4, if your form of shamanism emphasizes love and light. Is your form of shamanism only about making people happy? If so, you're a phony. Did you know that real shamanic initiatory rites often involve pain, suffering, and fear, while you hippies emphasize happy shit? Shamanism, real shamanism, is often tempered with ideas of chaotic malevolence while delving into the darker, deeper emotional aspects of being. Number 3. If you haven't been chosen by your tribal community to become a shaman, did the elders in your community, through the aid of the spirits, detect shamanic characteristics in you? Yeah, I seriously doubt they did. Number 2, if you haven't gone through years of training, there's an online course you can take for like $170, and in 150 hours, you're a shaman. But guess what? It doesn't work that way. Because after the spirits and or your community have found you appropriately suited to become a shaman, you need to go through years of grueling mental, psychological, and physical training under the apprenticeship of an actual shaman. Did you do this? Did you? I didn't think so. And number 1 reason why you're not a shaman is you were not born into an animistic society. Okay, there's a reason why this is number 1 on the list, because this is the most important reason why you can't be a shaman. The Western world is a Judeo-Christian-based Enlightenment-inspired society. It is not animistic. I've said this before. Being a shaman in this environment would be like scuba diving in a dry lake bed. Now, what exactly is an animistic society, you may ask? Animism is the belief that all of nature is animated, that flora and fauna and the natural environments such as rivers, lakes, mountains, and even thunderstorms are non-human persons with whom we may maintain and develop social relationships, that they're all filled with spirit. You modern shamans, you're LARPing is what you're doing. And you're lying. You're lying to yourself and to your clients. Or you're delusional. Take your pick. Now, why, may you ask, why do I care about this topic of plastic shamanism or neo-shamanism? What's the big deal? Let people believe what they want to believe. Why do I care? Because I like to emphasize the primal. Because the primal is the source where you find the raw truth. And shamanism is at the source. It's not only at the origins of the esoteric, but also all religions. It's said that all mystical and spiritual practices can be traced back to shamanism. But when you attempt to find information on the topic of shamanism, you get bombarded with this modern shit with one pathetic video, website, or article after another. Trust me, I'm not the only one who's critical of this. Native American communities really don't like this nonsense. They see it as a ruse to reap financial benefits by commercially exploiting indigenous cultures. But some of you neo-shamans might say, I went to a Native American reservation or Siberia or Ecuador and got training to be a shaman. Really? Just because you traveled to communities with indigenous shamanic traditions and participated in what you think are shamanic ceremonies doesn't make you a shaman. Were the ceremonies and or rituals you participated in quick one-on-one sessions, or maybe you did ayahuasca in Amazonia with a guy named Don Jose? Or was it a public shamanic sacrifice or mass healing? I have news for you. There's no guarantee that those that offered that shamanic experience were even shamans. You gotta understand that most of these communities are poor, and this is easy money for them. Those ceremonies and or rituals were altered specifically for gullible tourists like you. After you left, they weren't thinking about how they just had a meaningful connection with a fellow enlightened spirit. Nah, they were too busy laughing as they counted their money. In conclusion, my friends, I want to clarify something. It's okay to utilize shamanic techniques for personal use, to better commune with the spirits of the subconscious. Actually, I recommend it. You want to get primal, raw, and dirty in your practice. Just don't call yourself a shaman, because it's equivalent to stolen valor. You didn't earn it, and you don't deserve it. Until next time.